Okay, great. So, hi, I'm Sylvia DeMott, and I'm here with Susan Campbell. And I asked Susan to do this interview with me as I'm doing book research on the topic of boundaries, asserting yourself, and how to stay calm in the process of doing that. And yeah, I've been in a number of your honesty. I've been in maybe one of your honesty salons, and also your trigger group. And I've read a couple of your books, and I use your handouts all the time with my clients. And so I'm just so happy to be able to have this opportunity to talk to you. And I'm a little nervous too. So I'm going to just start off by just kind of making things broad and then kind of going a little more deeper to the point maybe where we're talking about some situations in your life where you've experienced certain things. So I'll just start really broad and ask you, like, what, as you hear me say, like, that I'm interested in writing a book on boundaries and asserting yourself. And I think from the perspective of writing it for someone who is either a people pleaser or highly sensitive person or conflict avoidant, I'm wondering what comes up for you, what your thoughts and opinions are around it.
Well, these are the people that probably need a book most on how to learn that it's safe or how to make it safe for yourself to assert yourself and mark boundaries. So I think you're onto something, Sylvia.
And what do you think that when you say safe, what do you think needs to happen to make it safe?
Okay, so what made a person a people pleaser? What made a person, like early learning experiences created a people pleaser? What created a person who perhaps doesn't think they are entitled to say no to somebody because it might be selfish? And then you mentioned people who I think have like trauma or some kind of developmental wound. So you say, what makes it safe? We have to look at how they got to feel unsafe in the first place. So we have basic childhood needs for loving attention, to feel safe, to feel like there's somebody you can go to if you are scared or feel unsafe. And you need somebody to like calm you down and show you that big emotions can be calmed, that sort of thing. Or it's safe to have big emotions. They're not like, the parents aren't always going to shut you down and say, oh no, don't be so emotional. How many people get that? So we just have to understand that so many of us grew up having little pockets of unsafety in our personalities. And so for some of us, when you did differ from your parents, you got punished or ignored. And so you become a people pleaser. Let's just say that that's one reason. Most of the reason why parents would punish or ignore the little person, it's not out of malice, but the parents' needs are so big that the parents' needs eclipse their ability to parent. That's life. It's unfortunate, but that happens. So to actually create safety for yourself, you probably need to, to actually feel safe in the world, you probably need to learn how to create safety for yourself.
How do you think you create safety? So what I'm hearing you say is to be able to really recognize how your childhood and the messages that you got and the way that you were treated impact you right now in terms of learning that it's not safe to say what you think.
Yeah. If everyone felt safe in the world, everyone would say yes when they wanted to say yes and no when they meant no, and they wouldn't worry about, is that going to ruin our friendship? Stuff like that.
Yeah. And then what would be the next step beyond that in terms of being able to do this.
So how to make yourself feel safe, you first have to realize how unsafe you actually feel a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Not all the time,
Yeah.
but most of us do pretty darn well given our, childhood wounds. But there are certain types of people or certain relationships where you just won't feel safe to take a risk pleasing the other person. That's usually what it's about, either just pleasing the other person or having the other person say something to you that's going to be so hurtful that, hey, I don't even want to risk saying it. Like some people out in the dating world, it's just so painful to hear, no, I don't want to go out with you, that they just don't even try, So you have to first recognize that you're one of those people who often feels unsafe. And then notice yourself in these patterns of people pleasing, saying yes when you should have said no.
Yeah.
So one thing is just starting to recognize that you have this issue. And then one of my favorite activities is this revising truth skill in the book, Getting Real, where you realize later, oh, I said yes again to the same person, and I'm always giving, and she's not giving back, and I just didn't mean it. And so you have to go back and say to your friend, I told you I'd help you with your daughter's party, but I was just trying to be a good friend, and I'm not taking care of myself. I'm going to have to say no, or some version of going out and coming in again. So that's a skill that people can use once they've realized that they're not too good sometimes the first time around.
No, I think that is a really good skill. And I have this issue myself. And I noticed that that it's hard for me at the very moment to often act on it. So it makes a lot of sense to be able to go back if you're courageous enough and just say something at another point. Yeah. Tell me about a time that you've had this happen.
Well, myself, I remember a situation where I wasn't very assertive. My pattern was, my wound has to do with, I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to, I don't want to put more, I don't want to put more responsibility on somebody else. So I have that shyness. So we could talk about where that came from, but first I'll just tell you my incident.
Sure.
So
can I ask you when it was?
Oh, this was probably 15 years ago. I wouldn't do this the same anymore. Maybe even longer, but it was right around the time that I was going to start to write the book, Getting Real. Okay, so that's about 20, over 20 years ago. But it's fresh in my mind. I had a workshop coming up, and I was at my friend's place of business where she has this big bulletin board where people could put their flyers up on the bulletin board, advertising workshops and that sort of thing. So I said, hey, Pam, I've got this flyer here. I'd like to put it up on your bulletin board. Could I? And she paused. She didn't answer me right away. So my mind has plenty of time to make up a story that, oh, she doesn't want to do this, I'm just being a burden. So I said to her, oh, never mind. I don't really need that. Simple thing. How many of us have done simple things like that? We make nothing of it. But since, I was on this path of authenticity, I go, Susan, that was a control pattern. See, I call those things control patterns. They're automatic personality habits to not be a burden on anybody. So that's anything I can do to not seem needy. That's my big taboo, is don't be needy. I will do that. So I knew I had that control pattern. I saw myself doing it.
Do you remember how you felt?
At the time I said it, I kind of felt fake grown up.
Mhm.
Like I'm pulling myself together. I'm not dependent on you. I don't need anything. I'm just like, I felt like a little disconnected from her. And I was actually disconnected with myself. I don't need it. I believed that I didn't need it in that moment, but
Yeah.
it took me maybe 5 minutes to go like that,
How do you think that you're able to get to that point where you went like that?
uh, well, I've been an observer of my own personality patterns for a long time. It's a lot easier to see things after the moment.
Yeah.
But right in the moment, sometimes you just go on automatic. So how I was able to get to that point was I'd already been observing myself doing things like that for many years. And I knew I had issues asking for what I want. I always knew that. My former husband, we used to have a joke, Susan has no needs. Susan has no needs. He made that up, to kid me,
Yeah.
because I just came across so damn independent, but it was false.
Susan has no needs.
Susan has no needs. That was the act. That was my act.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, where that came from originally was my mother's milk didn't come down when I was an infant. And I'm trying to get what I want, which is nourishment from the breast. Nothing's happening in terms of milk. And what is happening is frustration on her part and pain. I mean, that can happen to a new mother. Milk's not coming or not enough. So it's very painful. So my mother's upset, just with herself, basically. But I got the vibe that if I'm too needy, that causes pain for somebody else.
Neediness is one of that's a really hard thing to grapple with. I meet a lot of people who don't want to be needy.
That was me, but I'm good now. I'm quite good at it now, but I've been working on myself since my 20s.
But that you don't see
it takes a while.
Does that mean that you don't see yourself as being needy at this point? Or you see yourself?
I'm able to express my needs.
I can express my needs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Without
the concept like too needy or needy isn't like a relevant issue anymore. And it was a relevant issue for a while between me and other people. And I would label them as too needy because I couldn't mark my boundaries. That happens. And then let's say you have a partner, a husband or wife or something that calls you too needy. That's probably something to do with their ability to just easily say, not now, honey, maybe later, or to, their inability to either mark boundaries or accept their own limitations, because people can't always give me what I want, but it would be healthier for the relationship if they could accept that they can't, instead of blaming me.
Yeah.
I was
curious about what
there's a lot of pain.
Yeah. There are a couple of different things I want to follow up on. Like when you say mark boundaries, say more specifically about what you mean.
Okay. So let's say your partner's yelling at you and being nasty, being mean. A boundary would be, I'm not available for this conversation right now. And in my work, of course, I teach partners to have a pause agreement and say pause. So that would be marking a boundary to say pause. I'm not engaging in this anymore. Now the pause agreement is a little more complex because it signifies that both people realize that their nervous systems are not in good shape to have any kind of mutual conversation. So they need to calm down, get themselves to feel safe before they continue the conversation. But let's say you never read any of my books and you don't have a pause agreement. You can still say, I'm getting overwhelmed. I'm not available for this conversation. I'm going to take a walk, and I hope that you'll be able to speak to me in a different tone of voice when I get back. Something like that. That's marking a boundary. That's saying you don't get to treat me this way.
You don't get to treat me this way.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be done in an aggressive way at first. Probably aggression would not be good in a marking boundary situation. There is a time for aggression, and that's different from assertion. So we should probably define those terms.
Sure.
Aggression is like getting in somebody's face. So let's say somebody marks a boundary with me, but they're doing something they're a relative or my partner, and they're doing something that's extremely destructive to themselves. Let's say I might need to get aggressive and get over on their side of the net, instead of just saying, I'm not available for this or something. You will see a doctor. That your inability to sleep is affecting me, and you will go and try to get some help with this, that type of thing. So sometimes aggression is called for if you've tried assertion. Assertion just means asking for what you want. So some people think the word assertion is too aggressive, just to say I want, or hey, could you look at me while you're talking to me? That would be assertion. Aggression would be like, you idiot, you don't even ever make contact with me, or something, with an extra load on it, which is totally out of bounds, that kind of thing. But if I'm saying sometimes aggression in the service of something like life or death matters, or the life or death of a relationship, that's when I think you can get in the other person's face sometimes out of caring. But it'd be nice to be able to do that skillfully too.
Yes, I think that is hard to do skillfully. And
you should do assertion many times before you up the ante to aggression. The thing why aggression is important to have in your skill set, because sometimes that is, with certain people, that's the only thing that works. So you got to throw a fit. But if you're the type of person that learned to throw a fit to get attention in the past, I would not recommend that you do this, because
not recommend to go to,
you're coming from an unconscious place. I'm talking about consciously applied aggression for a worthy cause, without going over the top with it, like labeling, calling names, putting the other person down. You can be aggressive. You can say, this really needs to happen, and I need a commitment from you right now. No. And I'm not letting you alone until you make that appointment with that doctor or something like that.
Yes.
And the other person may not do it. I mean, you must realize that with boundaries, assertion, aggression, whatever the situation, you won't always get what you want, and you will have to learn to deal with not getting what you want without making that bigger than it is.
I want to ask you about that, but I also want to go back to the example that you gave with the story of the bulletin board. Did you go back and revise?
I'm trying to remember if I did. I think I told her about it much later, because I wound up writing about it in one of my books. So I think I told her about it. So it was a kind of a revision. But no, I didn't right away.
What would you have wanted to have said to her?
I would have said, the other day I was here at your office and asked, remember I asked you about that flyer for the bulletin board. And then I took back my request and said, I don't need it. I realized I was on automatic then. I was just trying to not be a burden. And I'd like to revise that. I'd like to go out and come in again. If I had it to do over, I would have waited, because I saw you pause. I would have just waited to see what you said. I wouldn't have interrupted with my little patterned backing away and unasking. So if you would have said yes, I would have said thank you. And if you would have said no, which you probably wouldn't have, I
Mhm.
would have said, okay.
Mm. Mhm. Yeah. Takes a lot of courage to go back when you're a people pleaser or
Mhm.
avoidant.
Yeah, but it's how you
So,
learn.
like,
If I went back, I would have learned if I started doing that at a younger age, when I started noticing the people pleasing.
sorry about that. Yeah.
If I'd started doing that, revising at a younger age, I would have been more skilled earlier,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
that really builds capacity to, like next time, now that I've said the words that were risky for me, and all the words of like, may I, and then just shut up about it and wait for the unknown answer, I would learn that I can handle that kind of ambiguity, that uncomfortable silence after you ask for something. And I would have developed new neural pathways to help myself feel safe in uncertain situations.
How long do you think it takes to develop those different pathways?
I think it, if you work on yourself, no matter how, I was going to say it depends on how unsafe your childhood was. So probably to some degree, it's how much unfortunate learning you have to overcome
Yeah.
there that tells you, well, it does seem safe. And, Susan and Sylvia said it was safe, but I don't feel safe. For some of us, it takes longer to trust. So you'll need to just do that same practice longer.
Mhm.
But I'd say most people who do about a year's worth of real concentrated self-work on these issues, using a self-help book like the one
Mhm.
you're going to write,
Yeah.
I think they could learn it in a year.
Tell me about a time when you've had to deal with rejection or a story around that.
Mhm. I'm pretty quiet about dealing with rejection. I haven't had that many heartbreaks, and they have to do with boys, when I was younger. Most of the time, I mean, for me, when I was 13, I was brokenhearted, my first rejection with a boyfriend, and I cried, and
Mhm.
and it probably took me a couple of weeks before I had a new boyfriend. I don't, I just have been the kind of person that says, yeah, well, because I've rejected a lot of people myself.
I mean, I think it's helpful that you're able to reject other people. I mean, some people can't reject other people,
Yeah.
and
So
it's hard to be rejected.
yeah. So I think I understand that it doesn't mean I'm a bad person. Um, just, they like somebody else more is what it
Mm.
always
Mhm.
was. Pick somebody else uh, other than me.
So sometimes when someone really struggles with rejection, maybe they're telling themselves too, I'm a bad person.
Maybe, yeah. The people that I counsel that have more rejection, and see, I didn't have really any rejection to speak of, even though I said I have issues about asking for what I want. It was, it was at the breast. But my whole life, I pretty much got what I wanted, and was,
Mhm.
felt at ease in the world. But rejection still hurt. It definitely hurt. But now I'm wanting to give you something juicier. So people that I counsel, the internet dating is one of the big things that's
Yeah.
up for a lot of people, both men and women. But I'm thinking of some of the women that I've counseled, and rejection is especially painful if you have been rejected by one of your parents. At least you perceive you were rejected. So so this one woman, she just her brother was the favored child by her father, and she wasn't, she had a hard time getting his attention. And the more she'd ask for attention, the more he'd kind of say, get away, and that's painful. And she had good parents, but he was a little self-centered, the father. He wasn't like generous with his time. So she grew up with a very painful core fear of rejection, because what makes an adult fear rejection in a huge way so that it limits them. See, for me, it was just painful, but I could move along. But for her, it was limiting, because any internet inquiry that she didn't hear back from,
Yes.
a tiny little investment, she just went into all her, I'm never going to be loved by a man. I'm too this, I'm too fat, I'm too old, I'm too something, and so she would go for years without then admitting that she wanted a life partner. And now, now she's back doing internet dating again. But you'll have to kind of take a while to get back up on the horse after you've had a few of those. Nobody responds to me. I must not be a very lovable person. So see, you make up stories. This is what you want to cover in your book, I know, is you don't get what you want, and it's painful. And so, this is the story I made up, was he liked her better than me. That was a pretty accurate interpretation, and it doesn't mean anything bad about me. Now, that's what a securely attached person would do. I'm not saying I was securely attached in every area, but that's a pretty secure, balanced response. But so many people, rejection means I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'll never find somebody who will want me. And of course, that makes the pain worse. But what they're trying to do by making up those stories is feel some sense of control over the pain. And that's the wrong idea, to think that pain, that level of emotional pain is bad. But we do think it's bad or wrong, or I'm wrong, or this kind of thing shouldn't be in the world. You just
We create the story around the pain.
Yeah, you just create that. Well, first of all, you create that pain is, if somebody feels pain, it's bad, and it shouldn't be in life. It shouldn't be part of life. Pain. There's all kinds of attitudes about pain, and it's normal to not like pain, and pain hurts, and pain needs to be dealt with this way. Ouch. Ow, that really hurts. Oh, that's a tender part of myself. Oh man, see if I can bring some tenderness to that part. See if I can be with myself. See if I can be with that pain. So, that's what I teach in my books, is compassionate self-inquiry, where you sit with the pain, and then you let the pain take you, and it'll move, and it'll change, and maybe it'll throb a little bit as you learn to breathe and open up space for it. And then maybe the pain's not so intense if you focus on the breath and the grounding of your feet on the floor, your butt on the chair, those kinds of things. Just really create a container for yourself, perhaps like your mom never did.
So really kind of being present.
Space, there's like, come to me, little one. It's like that. You're reparenting yourself. So when you learn to do that for your pain, you gradually outgrow your intense fear of emotional pain.
Yes. I mean, as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about a situation in which I felt rejected by a client. And then essentially I was working through a company. And so I got an email that said that they would prefer to work with someone else. And normally I think I wouldn't be so upset about it, but I had just started working for this company. So I was feeling worried that, I think I was starting to catastrophize. And I'm bringing this up because it took me like a whole week. Like I felt that pain in my body for so long. And that's what was so hard about it, was just how long I felt it in my body, like the pain in my heart, this kind of nervous around here. And I was surprised, I've been doing, it was maybe a type of work I hadn't been doing as long, with a company I hadn't been with as long. And maybe I was surprised by how long it took me to recover from that.
It's common for it to take that long. I'm thinking of a man that got a negative performance review at his job. And, he came in for a session right after that. And he says, I can't go to work. And he took at least a week off from work. He could not go back to that workplace because of his negative performance review.
It would be too painful.
Yeah. He was
just feel too ashamed.
He was still licking his wounds,
Yeah.
He had to have time for his whole nervous system to recalibrate to back to safety. See, that those intense shocks to the nervous system, they mimic some kind of shock that you might have had when you were little and no one helped you through that. So, we're going like this for, the tender part of your adult self. If you had more of that, if this man and you also had more of that as a child, where, it was like really inconsolable or really intense fear or pain, but you were held and it's okay. And, you were allowed to keep crying. No, it's not okay. Yes. Oh, and just, it's hard for a parent. It's hard for the best of parents to stay with the child long enough for their whole nervous system to downshift and be calm again. So many of us take a week or a few days at least to regulate, because we haven't learned the tools for quickening that process. And the tools for quickening that process are what I was just talking about.
About staying with the pain.
Self-compassion, hang with yourself longer than your parent was able to do.
When I remember reading in your Getting Real book, like one of the situations that you talked about was like being married to someone, and maybe they were in graduate school or something like that. This might have been a long time ago.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And maybe they weren't as interested in sex as you were. And you made that decision to just kind of keep bringing it up. And I wanted you to talk more about that, because that's something I just thought it was, that it takes a lot of at least courage in the beginning. I imagine it got easier as you did it, but just to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So to be able to express yourself like that.
Yeah, the story was my husband was feeling a lot of stress because he was a graduate student and he wasn't getting his PhD, and he wasn't that quick with testing, and he really was a little bit educationally behind because of where he grew up. And I already had my PhD, so there was that pressure too, on him, who wanted to catch up with me. But he just was not interested in sex, and maybe there was some other dynamics going on. You can kind of see, I was the PhD and he was the student, but I don't think that was mainly it. It was just he was under a lot of stress. And sex was the furthest thing from his mind, or any kind of self-care. He was just stressed. So I wanted sex. I was done with my PhD. I can have a good time now. And he would always reject me, and I would.
What would he say to you?
I'm too tired. He was always too tired, or I can't think about that now. It's just not. So he didn't make it about me, but I took it personally. But then I realized
you were telling yourself.
Pardon me?
What do you think you were telling yourself?
I'm not pretty. I'm not sexy enough. I'm not pretty enough. Things like that. you know, if I was, I mean, he must, if I was a little more something, but I also mostly, I mean, that was there, but I'm mostly, I think I had a pretty realistic view of my level of attractiveness. And I knew I was quite attractive to most people, but I also thought he had a very perfectionistic thing about very pretty women. So that's a whole other chapter here. And so there was some realism in that. And I found out much later that he did have an affair.
Oh,
Really
okay.
pretty woman after he got his PhD, but still, that he just, I wasn't quite his type, even though I had no problem with most men. So,
but
so
you were married to him.
I mostly told myself the realistic truth, but I went into self-pity too, and that. So I was losing. So what I shared in the book is I was just, I stopped asking, or I stopped even wanting sex, but it wasn't true for me. I mean, I acted like I didn't, but I noticed I was attracted to, other men then and things like that. And so I kind of wanted to reel that in and not lose the fact that I really wanted him, and I wanted sex with him. And that was very painful to own.
Where do you think you
Because
experienced
I
that
was a psychologist, I was always self-inquiring. If I had been an average person, I would have just left him alone. But I'm into the growth, so I'm gonna continue to feel my attraction and my desire for sex, even if he doesn't want it. I kind of just had that as a goal. And so I continued to let him know I could, I'd really love to have some time tonight in the sack with you, or I'd to say something, and I wouldn't spring it on him right in that moment, but I'd say, is tonight a possibility, and he might say maybe, but it never worked out for a long time. I mean, for a long time, we did work it out, but it was a long period in my.
Do you remember what you felt when you would say something like that and he said maybe and then didn't follow through?
I was a little bit acting over the top of my fear when I look back on it now. In other words, even when I would ask, I would be anxious. And, I mean, I could remember the feeling of anxiety, but I don't think I was as aware of it. And the same thing when he would say, yeah, maybe, or something, I would kind of act as if that was okay, and I would probably feel a little bit powerless, like, like I don't really, I'm probably not going to get what I want, but I just got to do this little exercise. I was doing a growth exercise for myself. And it was probably a little bit beyond my genuine capability to really feel wanting toward a person who doesn't want me, so I was denying to a tiny degree, I believe, my lack of safety. And I might have gotten better results if I'd admitted how scared I was. But anyway, that wasn't in my wheelhouse at the time.
Sure. Were you keeping track of that too? Like, it sounds like you were like specifically focusing on doing that with him. And so I'm wondering if you were journaling about it or talking to someone else about it. Because it seems like that was a specific thing you were working on.
I might have been journaling about it. I used to write a lot of things in my journals, but I think maybe during that particular period of my life, I was so damn busy. I don't know if I was journaling. I'm not sure. Would have been good, because that's journaling is a time when you go, oh, yes, I didn't quite feel safe, but I acted like I did. Because then I would, when I was journaling, I would be a lot quicker to catch my automatic behavior.
When you were journaling, were you just journaling like a free form, or were you journaling kind of answering certain questions for yourself?
I just free form journal, whatever's up for me. Was almost always either feelings or interpersonal situations that I was struggling with, or grand ideas of books I'm going to write or ideas that I'm going to teach.
Yeah.
I was doing that from an early age.
Yeah, I'm amazed by how many books you've written. You've written over 12 books. It's just amazing.
12, yeah. There's another kind of common example of lack of assertiveness that I want to make sure we get to. So
Yes.
can I just offer it now?
Please.
It's the kind of person who wants to, let's call it a married couple, because that's where it happens most often, but it can happen with friends or anybody. I want, and okay, I'll this is an actual person. Okay, John wants Mary. I'll give them generic names. John wants some attention from Mary, some warmth. Could be sex, but sometimes it's just some kind of validation or warmth. And he walks into the room and she's doing something else, and he goes, she doesn't want to be with me. In fact, I think she's probably even finds me kind of repulsive. I mean, John actually would make up stories like that. She first is like, she doesn't want me. And it all comes from the impulse to ask, but the fear of getting rejected. And so then the story gets really convoluted in his head. And he starts to move away from Mary and put up a little bit of a wall and get a little detached and kind of stubborn and into his own thing. So that is another quite common unfortunate result of lack of assertiveness.
No, it's a hard thing to kind of break, because you don't even see that you're doing it, and you're playing it all out in your head. You're just playing it all out in your head.
Plays it all out in his head. And then another client, very similar. I had this couple and they hadn't been having sex in like years. And she says, well, he used to be the one who initiated, and I just don't initiate. And then he says, yeah, but the last couple times that I did initiate, you said no. Couple of times, 2 times. We broke it down, the three of us. 2 times he said he heard no, and he stopped asking, and he realized that. He went, whoa, I made up a story that our sex life was over after 2 times of hearing no. See, this is what people's minds do to them.
Yes. No, we play it all out in our mind.
Yeah.
It's hard to do. I mean, it seems like it's hard to do unless you're really willing to work on it, and or you have someone else that can kind of help you with it.
Yeah. And it's hard.
I'm just curious about unhealthy people, like being in a relationship with someone who is unhealthy, like maybe toxic, maybe kind of very critical of you, maybe someone that puts you down a lot or kind of holds you at arm's length. What would you recommend then?
I would say, why are you staying in that relationship? And the reason might be, I can't support myself. We have kids. We have too much invested in this. But some people do, and that's a complicated set of reasons. If it's something like that, I can't say you should leave the relationship. I would never say that, because everybody's got their own path of learning. Maybe if you just like feel this upset about being criticized so much for 1 more year, maybe you'll grow to the point where you can say, I'm not available for you talking to me like that anymore. No. Obviously the first line should be some kind of, I don't like this. you don't just take it, and then divorce. You've got to
Yes.
take responsibility for the fact that you're scared. Now, if you're scared of being killed or beaten, then you really shouldn't be in the relationship. I don't care how many kids you have. I don't care how much your economic situation is. You can please try to figure something else out. But if it's like emotional pain, there might be a reason that you have to endure that for a while you're learning. If you're not learning anything, and if you're unsafe all the time, I would question whether you should stay. I have 2 chapters in my book, Truth in Dating, about how to end things consciously and when is it time to end it. And one of the things is, you pretty consistently don't feel safe, and it's and you're not able to learn. You're not able to grow. I mean, if you don't feel safe, but you're learning how to feel safe, okay, then there's like a positive direction. But if you're stuck and frozen in fear, that can't be good.
Then you should really get out of it.
That
would be a hard time to get out of
it's
too.
time to discuss leaving. I mean,
Yes.
a lot of people, if they hear how a lot of I'm going to call them bad partners who are highly critical, let's say, and insulting, and maybe they have a mean streak. That's not good. I'm not going to say just overlook it, but if they hear that if this doesn't change, I'm out of here. I mean, sometimes if you've asserted yourself and expressed yourself in a personal, direct, healthy way over and over, and nothing changes, you have to go to the next level, which is, if this doesn't change, I've tried talking doesn't work. This is consequences now. There are going to be consequences. If you talk to me like this, I'm going to go stay in a motel for 2 nights. If this continues, I'm going to see a divorce lawyer, stuff like that.
Setting boundaries.
Yeah.
How do you connect with your anger when that's something that's very uncomfortable for you?
Well, anger shouldn't be your first response. Your first response, I mean, any response can be your first response, but your first attempt, and I don't mean.
I'm even thinking, I'm thinking more like you need to, for some people, they might need to connect to their anger to be able to even say the thing.
Yeah. What I mean is you can please connect with your anger, but find a way to ask for what you want, rather than you never, you always, you're this, you're this mean SOB. So it's like, how do you connect with your anger? First, you have to not be afraid of your anger. And some people.
How do you not be afraid of your anger?
Well, you might be afraid of your anger. Let's say you're afraid of your anger because, let's say, you grew up in a violent home, your parents fought, you want nothing to do with anger. So you're afraid of somebody else's, you're also afraid of your own. You need to do some healing work on that, because you won't be able to mobilize that, that kind of self-regard. You've been used to kind of being a punching bag. So start with compassion for that child that went through what you went through, and try to remember in moments when you're calm. And often, if this was your story, you might need a therapist. Talking this through, feeling it through. We call it working through in therapy, allowing feelings to come up, but not all at once, so they overwhelm you. So the therapist can help you with remembering, but coming to terms with how damaged certain aspects of your response capabilities are. So, and that hurts our pride a lot of times, but we have to admit that. And then after you know how to help yourself feel safe and bring compassion to that wounded part, anger that is meant to be there, like no, I am not taking this,
Yeah.
that's useful anger if something harmful is coming at you. I fought off a rapist once, Sylvia.
Wow.
And I didn't even know I had it in me, but this guy,
Wow.
I was in a foreign country, so we didn't even speak the same language, but the overlapping language was a little bit of French. So I tried to speak a little bit of French to him to talk him out of it. This was in French Polynesia. And when he started, I mean, he's coming at me and he's starting to, take my clothes off and push me into the bushes. But it's when he really started to tear my clothes off, I let out this blood-curdling scream that could probably be heard for half a mile. And I just kept screaming. It wasn't one scream. It was, just like a fire siren or something. And he just dropped me right where he was, and we were sort of halfway into some bushes. And he got on his bicycle. He was on a bicycle and he drove away.
Oh.
And then a bunch of people from the nearby hotel came out and I'm sitting on the ground shaking and everything. But I mean, that is an actually empowering experience.
Wow.
But sometimes the point is, it's nice to have access to aggression when you really need it.
Yes.
I didn't even know I had it. Honestly, I was like, whoa, Susan, you really came through for our whole body here. Right on.
That was great.
I think rape is traumatizing. For me, it was like, well, it was traumatizing still.
Yeah.
Even just to know that just walking down the street, you're not safe as a woman sometimes. I mean, not
No,
that
it was very
I think that every minute when I'm walking down the street. That's not healthy either, but to be just there is something to the vulnerability of a woman in certain subcultures too, because that was a culture where I learned later that men do what they want with women. It was a little bit more toward a primitive type culture.
Thank you for sharing that story.
Mm.
Can I ask you another question?
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering about the work, like this authentic communication and like in the workplace, like in corporate culture.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that when I work as a therapist, I share a lot of like what I share a lot of what I learned from you and the honesty salons, like around the sentence stems and around expressing yourself, and that I find it harder to do within like leadership coaching and within the corporate culture. People are a lot more protective.
Yeah. And
I'm wondering how, like, your thoughts on that, like how to bring that up more. Like I seem to have my own stuff that gets in the way of being able to work with them on that, when they say that they're tend to be more fearful about how they come across, or not wanting to share certain things about themselves, wanting to be a lot more paying attention, not wanting to be taken a certain way.
Well, if you're going to work in the corporate sector, anybody who works in the corporate sector as a consultant or a therapist needs to accept that it feels unsafe to people to create conversation, to bring up things that are going to create conflict. It feels more unsafe there than it does with your wife or your kids generally. But yet the kind of unsafe that you feel with your wife might hit at a deeper level. But corporate environments, you have to start with that issue of the corporate culture. And how come we have a culture that punishes somebody calling attention to themselves and saying, hey, the customers don't like our product, and that's like the bearer of bad news often gets punished in the corporate world. There's often so many faulty norms. The reward system is all messed up with regard to facilitating honesty. So don't be naive, I want to say to all the consultants, you got to deal with that.
So you're talking about dealing with it on a systemic issue.
Yeah. Yeah, and you may not have been hired to raise awareness around lack of safety, but and you don't have to necessarily raise it in the most blunt, explicit way, but you just have to know that people are afraid to start conversations where it's going to create a whole lot more. In the corporate world, we're busy. And if I get into conflict with a person, it's going to take a lot of time to work this out. And I got a list this long of other things I got to get to. So in the corporate world, because of the busyness and because of the value on getting deadlines met and goals met and products out the door, it counters good human relationships, because conflict avoidance is time efficient. If you don't avoid conflict, you're going to spend a lot of time working on conflict. Now, it's healthy to learn how to resolve conflict in the workplace.
Yes. Yes.
I've done a lot of that, and people learn these skills during the team building retreats and stuff like that I would do. Some companies would hire me to come back every 6 weeks, then every 6 months to see if we're still on track. But a lot of companies won't even hire, they don't have the budget, or maybe I didn't insist enough to keep some follow-up so that they really develop the new habits that they learned during the team building or the training that I did. Because people are pretty good in a off-site training. Actually, I can teach them to say the truth and use active listening and other conflict tools, but they let them go. They forget them if the consultant goes back home and doesn't keep bothering them.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is that it's a bigger issue and that it's more important to address it in teams or in a higher sense. What if you're working with someone?
Kind of like we say, get above the level of the problem and say, hey, why do we avoid conflict? Because we got too much on our plate. I mean, that's mainly it, really. We have too much on our plate, especially if I'm a manager, and
Yes.
performance reviews suck because I don't want to start a conversation with this guy. That means then I'm going to have to monitor all of that. I mean, people, it's a lot of lies out there, a lot of half-truths, let's call it.
Yeah. What if you're just working with someone though, individually?
Well, that's a whole different ballgame. Even if I'm coaching an executive, they'll tell me the truth. They'll tell me the truth. I'm safe.
Yes.
Somebody's paying for them to talk to me. And people want things to be different in their corporation, but who am I to change this whole structure that says I only get rewarded when I get 20 widgets out the door every day? If I only get 10 widgets out the door, I might not have a job in a year. So we got to look at the reward system.
Sure. Yeah.
Our whole culture is go, 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 haven't got time for the pain, haven't got time for the real conflicts that are brewing under there. So we just sort of avoid people. Now, I might be giving corporations a bad rap. I mean, there is an evolution going on in our culture, and to some pockets of subcultures. But then on the other hand, I consult with some of these new startup tech companies with kids who all they have done is text all their life.
Yeah.
Completely ill-equipped for difficult conversations face to face.
Would you ever recommend that anyone text when they're upset or having a conflict?
If it works, if that's what they find works for them, and they can't, there's some reason why they can't do it face to face. I mean, it's better than nothing, but real important conflicts, whether it's with your mate or with coworkers, it's always better face to face.
Mhm. Yes, I agree with that. How long are you gonna keep doing what you're doing? I'm just very, I'm admiring of you.
I wish I knew, I say to myself, I wish I knew when I was going to die, because then I would time it.
Sure.
I would time my retirement to about 2 years before I'm going to die.
Okay.
And then I would have 2 years to see what life is like, who I am,
Mhm.
without all this creative, wonderful, interactive life I have.
Mm,
You know,
mhm.
it would still be probably creative and wonderful, but I'd spend more time alone and, probably just being with family, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
If my brothers are still alive, talking about all the things we never got to talk about because we all have busy lives, stuff like that.
What are you enjoying about your life right now?
Everything.
Hmm.
I enjoy every minute.
Hmm.
Once in a while, if I'm on somebody else's Zoom call, like I notice I'm scratching my nose, because I'm not sure I want to say this. Okay.
Please say what you're gonna say.
Some friend has some event that I really don't want to be at, and they do it for too long.
Sure, sure.
If see business things, I have power to negotiate. I only do Zoom calls for an hour and a half and no more.
Sure.
But some of my friends, I don't know, they can just go on and on Zoom. And so, yeah, I don't enjoy the last half hour of those 2 hour Zoom calls.
Sure,
And I
sure.
just find a way to, block my screen out or pick my computer up and walk around. I mean, I don't just sit there, but I don't enjoy, a lot.
Sure.
I don't enjoy a lot of sitting that I agreed to because I wanted to be a good friend.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm hearing you say that you enjoy pretty much everything about your life. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I talk about you with my boyfriend, and I just say, like, you live such a full life. You live such a full life, and I love to live a full life like yours,
Yeah.
as long as you
I've
have.
come to terms with who I am, my strengths and weaknesses, and I accept who I am and where I am, and I don't compare myself to anybody else. I'm just I'm doing
No,
me.
that's a wonderful place to be.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think I'm done right now. I feel complete. I have enough information. I have enough right now.
Okay. Terrific. Well, I wish you the best of luck with this book, Sylvia.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, and do you have any sense of when it might be? Because we're going to put this on YouTube, so maybe people should be
September 2022. Yes.
September 22. Start looking for this book by Sylvia DeMott on what's the general subject, or do you have a title?
I don't have a working title yet, but it's really on asserting yourself and boundaries for people who are people pleasers or highly sensitive or conflict avoidant.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll let you know as I get closer. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm imagining it'll be useful to a lot of people.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.